healthy respect for the environment and wanting to keep the water clean is like the natural progression to trying to fix one of the world's greatest problems. If I can help build purpose into other people's lives, we can fast track cleaning up the plastics in our oceans.
We're the only ocean cleanup group that are monitoring the water for microplastics 24/7. The data that we're creating can be shared with some of the biggest polluters in the world, and we can all work together to change that and to stop the rubbish getting to the water.
Mahi, good morning, good afternoon. 2 minutes past. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us today. It's these webinars are an opportunity to really do a deep dive into the work that some of our extraordinary impact partners do on a daily basis. Understand the expertise that you have developed over years, and really give our listeners an understanding of the complexity of the work, the impact of the work, and the commitment of the people behind the work. So welcome once again. Could I just start by asking you to give us a brief background about your professional sort of history and what brought you to Seabin?
Yeah, and thank you for having me as well. This is a great platform, I think, that you've created. iEqualChange, of course, but the webinars too. Thank you. Yes, so my name is Mahi. I am CEO of the Seabin Foundation, and the background behind this role essentially is I've done an environmental geography degree as a bachelor, and then I did that in Canada and Montreal, and then continued in doing a master's degree in oceanography in Brazil, studying a marine reserve and how the nearby city and river had impacted the marine reserve and the islands through the pollution that was coming from the nearby coast. And then I've just finished a PhD in education as well at Southern Cross University. So this is a background as well, combined with some traveling and witnessing the problem firsthand, and doing some volunteering as well.
So what does Seabin actually do?
So Seabins are a great technology. So they are essentially a rubbish bin that is installed in the water. So visually we can compare it to a pool skimmer, where essentially the bin has a pump underneath it. It's working 24/7, so it needs to be attached to a floating structure. So in ports, harbors, or marinas, it's about the size of a normal bin, and it filters the top layer of the water surrounding the bin, about 10-meter diameter on a calm day. And this is also one of the reasons we want them in ports, harbors, and marinas. They don't necessarily work as well with high waves. And they essentially filter 600,000 litres up to 1.3 million litres of water per day, depending on the pump strength. And they collect on average 4 kilos of marine debris a day. So they do the work for us 24/7 on their own, and we simply need to empty them.
Up to 1.3 million litres of water a day sounds extraordinary. I actually had the opportunity to spend some time with a team down at the Maritime Museum in Sydney, and fantastic to see the Seabins in action, and also just see how much crap they gather on a daily basis. I was shocked. I mean, everything from plastics and large and small to cigarettes to apparently the odd sex toy has ended up in these bins. Yes, lots of strange and colourful items, but just the amount of rubbish that is going into our bays is actually quite heartbreaking to see. And I imagine every time you go and see, as I'm sure you have many times, just how much is being collected. Where does, I mean, obviously this passion for you has been evolving over many years. Where did it come from for you, can I ask? That moment? Because what we find is everyone working in this sector had a moment or a series of moments that galvanized them on this path. What was it for you?
I think for me, it's a series of moments. It's kind of escalated into the passion that I have nowadays. It's gone from one passion to another. I think in terms of really to want to be engaged in addressing the environmental impact and have a positive impact with my work, this has come from witnessing the destruction of the life support system, the earth, essentially the biosphere that we all share, and witnessing its destruction in so many forms has really been the fuel for me to take action. But in terms of the series of moments, I think I've always been in love with water as a child and not knowing really much of this life support system. And that went on to the ocean and went on to studying oceanography and understanding how everything is interconnected and how essentially every decision that we make is having a ripple effect on what we rely on, the air and the water we drink, and the ecosystems that feed us. So really the ongoing process of having the experience, having the pleasurable experience of surfing and playing in the water and enjoying the sceneries, and then tying this up with studies and understanding how things work and how we have power. We all, each of us, hold the power to either impact it more, fuel its destruction, or mitigate it. And I want to be on the part of the ones who mitigate it.
That brings up a really critical point, which is, it seems most of us globally are aware to some degree at how critical this time is, and yet feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
Wonder what can we do? The problems feel large, complex, if not overwhelming. What keeps you going? I mean, you have a much deeper understanding, both personally and scientifically, around the complexity of this issue, around plastics in the ocean. Do you believe, A, that we can make the dent in this issue that we need to make over the next several years, or does it sometimes feel hopeless?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. And I think it's important to address it because a lot of people feel very overwhelmed with it. I do tend to have a positive approach to things, so that might be helpful. But yes, I do think we will carry this problem for most likely centuries ahead of us and keep discovering the impact of plastics in our environments, in our bodies, on our health, not only on the marine life's health and on the visual aspect. But yes, so I think the problem is big. I think the problem will last. But I also think that if we look at the history of plastics, I'm not sure how many people know that plastic has only been around for about 75 years. When we put this into perspective, since the 1950s, there was a production of about 2 million tons a year when it first got adopted widely for single-use items. And we're now having a production of, as of 2021, 390 million tons of plastic being produced a year, which is increasing exponentially by the year because of the demand on single-use plastics and also how useful the product is in construction and so on, but so many sectors. But it's only 75 years. We've been on this earth for, depending on the science, 350,000 years as Homo sapiens. The earth has been doing its thing, moving its ecosystems for 4.5 billion years. So I think 75 years, and if we remember too, or learn that, plastic has come to address an environmental problem, which was that billiard boards were made for the game. They were made out of ivory. And someone came up with plastic to replace ivory and have the same, density for the billiard balls to be used. And that then became a product adopted widely. But if it has come to fix a problem, we can find solutions to address this issue that has only been around for 75 years. and really, really, really improve the way that we use this product, that we retrieve it, that we cycle it, and make sure that it doesn't end up in the marine environment. So I do believe that we have so much space to improve. It will be around for a long time, but we can make it so much better.
What's the reality with plastic? Because I think most people don't know what actually happens to it. I mean, is it true that it just takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to break down? And so if it doesn't get recycled, it's going to outlive, it goes into the waterways and into landfill. I mean, it doesn't break down. Or are we getting better at designing plastics that are biodegradable? And there are different qualities and better qualities coming online.
Yeah, it's a very complex conversation. We could speak about that alone for quite a while. So yes, there are new products that are better. There are products that are biodegradable. And mostly what matters is to look at what is home compostable. There is a lot of greenwashing around portion of certain plastics being made of natural material, and that's another question: where does it come from? If it comes from fossil fuels versus plant-based, but rarely it is only made of plant-based. It needs some sort of chemical reaction to create the polymer, so the aggregation of molecules, so that the plastic is resistant, which is often why we use plastics. So all of this evolution for different sectors is addressed with different solutions. So I think we need to be careful with the terms degradable. That doesn't have bio in front, and even that is not perfectly legislated in terms of the wording that is used. But degradable often is only a type of plastic, same fossil fuel material, that will break down into smaller and smaller pieces and create infinite amount of microplastics. So this is not a solution at all. Biodegradable might be. Again, a lot of products are in compostable in industrial settings. A lot of councils do not have the capacity to process compostable plastics that need the industrial setting, which means the microorganisms into a certain type of temperature that will break down those types of plastics if they do end up there. So this is not a solution either. So a few plastics are home compostable, which then are likely to break down into a few months, but they are rarely the plastics that will be long-lasting. So
yeah, and that we're mostly using, right? And it sounds like it's the risk where people start to hear there's better plastics coming online without understanding actually what that means, and therefore think the issue is being addressed.
Yeah.
Whereas the bulk of the issue is not. So Seabin is really looking at. I mean, you are at the really. I'm thinking of a clever metaphor, but I can't think of one around the bleeding edge of on the water. Why Seabin for you? What inspired you to want to work with Seabin?
Working with passionate people, with people who want to make a difference. I mean, I'm sure there's passionate people in every sector, but passionate people about the things that I am passionate about, and that want to get over this sense of being overwhelmed, essentially. And there's also, for me, the sense of working with people who want to address a problem on a daily basis, the people that get in touch with us, the people that want to volunteer, the people that want to understand the data, the academics that want to use it to extract science and produce effective change. So for me, this engagement on a daily basis, and don't get me wrong, I struggle to get on top of all the inquiries that we get. So it's not that I am able to get to them all, but I get very, very motivated by how people want to make a difference, and to see this number growing over the years is highly motivating for me.
And as an organisation, you have an interesting structure. Can you share with us the difference between Seabin the company and Seabin the foundation? Because you have this educational arm to the business as well, and also and then the foundation work, which is doing working with the Seabins. Can you share with us how and why you set it up that way?
Yeah, so I came on board and it was already set up in that way, but I think it makes sense in many aspects. The issue of plastic pollution must be addressed from as many angles as we can possibly imagine. It's such a big issue that I think there are many ways of tackling it. It's a waste issue, and therefore the for-profit makes sense because there are waste management companies that retrieve waste and litter and collect bins, and so it makes sense that there is a service provider to retrieve pollution from the marine environment. And this is essentially the product offering of the for-profit is the service and the Seabin installation and the emptying and the engagement that goes around that too. Essentially, the for-profit works a lot with major sponsors and partnerships to then engage with the corporate sector and the public sector as well. So that there is this full service product offering with the for-profit that is essential to be established and put in place as a strategy. The foundation comes in to work with what the Seabins are collecting and then derived from it education for all members of the community from all ages, and work with the science of that can be done with this as well. So the community engagement science citizen science program is what we do, working with the volunteers, work experience, internships. We are developing an online education program. We created the Ocean Health Lab where we have scientists looking at the microplastics. We've refined the methodology. So yeah, the list goes on, but science, community engagement, education for the piece that isn't already addressed by the for-profit. This is where the Seabin Foundation comes in.
And that's the not-for-profit, which
Yes.
iEqualChange businesses are helping fund.
Exactly. And we're an Australian registered charity with ACNC, with tax deductibility. So it's officially two different entities and ways of supporting our work. Yeah.
Are the Seabins themselves being adopted fast enough? And if not, what are the barriers?
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people might not know as well that there's been a transition in the business model for the for-profit, whereas Seabins were adopted rather quickly in the first couple of years when it was a commercial product that people could buy, just like we can buy a water bottle. People could buy them. There has been over 1,000 sold in 53 countries within the first 2 years, which is really exciting. The thirst for a solution that people demonstrated then was great. The business model changed because at a certain point, the Seabins required maintenance and required all sorts of replacements of the pump that lasts for about a year or two and so on. So this then became a liability, and the solution was to change to a service model where Seabin provides the Seabin installation and the servicing and the maintenance. So it's not anymore possible to buy a Seabin itself. And this model is adopted rather quickly. The growth of both the Seabin Foundation and the for-profit over the past year has been quite phenomenal. Essentially, we doubled in size, each of us, but we will never really go as fast as we should. The plastic issue is so big, and we ideally would have at least 60 Seabins in every major city, urbanized area that we know contribute massively to the issue of plastics in the oceans. And we want to stop it at the river level, at the waterways, before it enters the ocean, becomes much harder to retrieve. So yeah,
so 60 Seabins in every major city.
That would be the minimum. At the moment,
Right.
we have 34 in Sydney. Yeah.
And what would it take to achieve that?
It takes major sponsorship and buy-in from both public authorities and government bodies at every level. So to have a budget essentially assigned to mitigating the problem of marine pollution, which is rarely existing. So having that in place. And then there is at the moment mostly corporate support with the sponsorship package for the for-profit. That is what is allowing those Seabins to be in place, and then for the data to come to the foundation to be analysed, and for litter prevention strategies to be looked into. So this is what we need for more of them to be put in place, and nothing stops us from having major donations within the foundation to essentially pay for the servicing that the for-profit provides to sponsors. So there's two ways of doing it, essentially having major donations coming through the foundation, or corporate sponsorship, or public authorities buy-in directly to the for-profit.
So iEqualChange retailers, by giving back $1 at a time, have already raised over $225,000 for Seabin. Can you share what does funding like this do for the organisation, and the amount of plastic that it removes from the sea?
Yeah, it's just impossible to express the gratitude, first of all, for all this collective effort of all the retailers. So huge thank you. This is allowing us to continue our work and plan ahead, because we know that this is ongoing, and we're extremely grateful to every retailer that chooses to donate through iEqualChange. And this funding is essentially supporting the Seabin Foundation's work into reviewing the ways that we do the analysis of the Seabin catches. And essentially what we do is to tackle the problem at the root cause. We are working to not only have the cleanup being operational with the Seabin operations at the for-profit, as I described, but we want to extract all the knowledge that we can gain from what the Seabins are collecting. There are no other sampling devices that collect plastics 24/7 around a harbour like Seabins can do in Sydney. So
anywhere in the world as well, as I understand.
No, there's no sampling device. There are other technologies that have been developed to retrieve plastics, but from what we know, there are none that are being used to do the scientific analysis of what those devices are collecting in the way that we have established our work in a collaboration way between the for-profit and the not-for-profit, where we have deliveries of catches every day at our ocean health lab, and we have scientists that go through and apply a subsampling methodologies to know how many microplastics, which types, which brands, and then we can develop a litter prevention strategy and a framework with measurable outcomes for behavior change, which is not always a comfortable thing to talk about, behavior change, but there are incentives like the bans, for example. If they are backed up by data and there's evidence to justify implementing them, I think the buy-in is bigger. I think people understand that this problem is not only in another country or in someone else's city, it's in their backyard, and this problem is being addressed and it's a positive outcome. We want to measure that. So this is what the foundation does. So this funding is supporting us to do that, supporting us with our citizen science program, so supporting the volunteers that also contribute to our database of Seabin catch data. And we essentially also are currently really excited to develop an online education program where we'll film the whole operation from day one to the final reports that we generate. And we'll have 7 units, and we want to deploy this online education program from 2024 in rural areas as well as urban areas, so that we can really ripple out into as many communities as possible.
And if anyone's down at the Sydney Maritime Museum, there's a extraordinary, just reach out to Mahi to see if she'll let you go in, and it's really incredible to see how much rubbish gets picked up every day. We'll also share a short video that we shot later on around just exactly how much crap is picked up every single day from these bins. And it also seems like it's become a small tourist attraction. I can see when people stop by and wonder what's going on when they look at those bins, and the team are really great to show me around. What I also understand of the work from speaking with you and Pete is there is a really well developed series of partnerships with industry and with corporates that is helping accelerate the impact of your work. Can you talk to how important those partnerships are for your work, the thinking behind them, and the impact that they're having?
Absolutely. So the partnerships model is essentially bringing on corporates who want to, or any company, anyone really that wants to invest in supporting a Seabin. So it's a little bit like adopting a Seabin, and these sponsorships and these partnerships, often in the context of corporates, is a mutually beneficial experience, because both the water gets cleaner and the foundation gets to do the work of analyzing what it has to address the root cause, but it also provides an engaging experience for the staff through a launch event for the sponsorships. So generally the sponsorships are 3 years as a package, and it also includes a data collection day, so an experience with the Ocean Health Lab and the Seabins themselves, and then there's also a series of marketing benefits. But this is the product offering of the for-profit. So these partnerships are extremely valuable in that context. And part of the funding from those partnerships and sponsorships is then used to pay the Seabin Foundation to deliver on the commercial service of analyzing the plastic and the Seabin catches. So it's supporting both organizations.
And what does an average day look like for you? Can you share with us what I'm sure you're juggling many things, but can you give us a sense of what that might look like?
Yeah, I feel like it would be more interesting to speak to the average day of our lab scientists who are based at the Ocean Health Lab at the Maritime Museum in Sydney. They get to go to the lab and sort through the Seabin catches and really see the plastics on a daily basis. I used to do that 4 years ago when I started. And now I guess my day is mostly to come to the office and reply to important emails and look at, I guess, a lot of the strategy and the grant application and managing the project deliverables and coordinating project management with our great data and program manager, Sol Wadani. So Talia and Kali are our lab scientists based in Sydney. And so working with our small team and the extended team from the for-profit, coordinating events and deliverables with the corporates when there are launch events. We also work with the museum through some of the programs that they've implemented into the museum using Seabin. And we also coordinate some volunteers going into the lab, as well as 2 visits a day. So if anyone wants to go visit the Ocean Health Lab, it's possible through the ticketing system of the Maritime Museum. And there's 2 visits open to the public, 11:30 a.m., 1:30 p.m. on weekdays at the Ocean Health Lab. And we're working on hopefully having someone working on weekends as well to welcome the public all day long. So these are all the things that I work on and plus more.
And what part of your day do you most look forward to?
I like diversity.
Yeah,
I like diversity.
Yeah.
I like diversity. So I like the blend of getting through my emails and with then having meetings with the girls and working, at the moment we're sending some samples from the Seabins of both biomass plastics and also the oil pad for toxicology analysis. This is part of some funding that we've received with the construction and full establishment of the Ocean Health Lab. We're going to have a toxicology analysis, which is not cheap, but we want to know if there are some toxic chemicals attached to the plastics or the biomass or the oil pad of the Seabins, which, as we said, filter 1.3 up to 1.3 million liters of water a day. Therefore, the concentration of those chemicals is possibly very high compared to an item that would be found floating alone elsewhere. And plastics are known to be very porous and attract a lot of chemicals within their surface. When we look at them through the microscope, we can see that the surface area is very likely to attract chemicals like pesticides and PFAS, which might be coming from flame retardants. Chemicals, so there's all the agricultural runoffs and the heavy metals and so on. So we want to be able to have a more educated knowledge around the contamination of the Seabin. So these are the kind of projects that excites me.
And I've always in the moments I've spent with you and Pete and with the team at the museum, it's extraordinary the amount of science that goes into understanding the work, the Seabins, the long-term impact, and I think what's so brilliant about the Seabin model is that for most of us, it's a very simple intervention. It's this thing that floats. It's easy to understand. It's tangible. It's picking up all that crap out of the sea that shouldn't be there, which we're swimming in, and gives us a clear window into how much is floating in our oceans. And like you say, it's only in the last 50 to 75 years, and most of it probably in the last 20 years, with things that should be illegal, like plastic water bottles to hold water. It's just a crazy idea.
In most places in the world it is, yeah.
Sorry?
In most places in the world it is, when we have fresh drinkable water.
Yeah, it's like, there's the enormous unseen cost to convenience, and of course more and more of us are carrying our bottles of water around, but it seems as a species we build a lot of good and we do a lot of damage. So it's cleanup time for the incredible organizations like Seabin.
Thank you.
So 50 years from now, looking back on your life, hopefully even longer, what will you feel most proud of?
Well, hopefully, if I can carry on with this work that I'm very grateful for, I want to look back and feel proud of not having given up because the issue feels monstrous. I want to look back and really feel that I have kept pushing through, no matter how small the positive outcomes might feel at times. I think they do add up, and over a period of another 30, 40 years of passionate work, I think it will be significant if we sum this up with the collective impact of our team and the organizations that we collaborate with, because really I think we need to do it together with as many organizations as possible. I think not having given up and feeling that I've been aligned with my values as well. I think that's something that for me matters a lot. I think the question of critical thinking, applying ethics into our decision making as humans, but also as companies, as managers, as leaders, in whichever areas that we operate in, whether it's a family setting or whether it's an organization. I think being aligned with my values is something that I really have dear to my heart.
Thank you for sharing that. It is an honor to be able to do work that is creating an impact that's bigger than ourselves, that is obviously deeply rooted in purpose. And in the time that I've had the opportunity to meet yourself and other incredible impact leaders, there's a sparkle in their eyes, as there is in yours, around the opportunity to kind of do this work and to know that we are working for something bigger than ourselves. And I know for a lot of iEqualChange businesses, it really excites the team, from the leadership team to the whole organization, to be able to see clearly the impact that they're having on organizations such as Seabin. Can you share, how can iEqualChange businesses help, and what's the additional impact it can create?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really the goal and the vision here is cleaner waterways. So I think anything that anyone can think of that will generate cleaner waterways will help our mission, because we really want the word to be out there. So if it is to use the Seabin technology to speak about how there are great things or people passionate implementing solutions, I think it's often a nice way to bring up the conversation in our in our surroundings. So I think speaking about it is the number one thing. Obviously, keeping on providing great support, whether it is by donating or looking at engaging through volunteering. But really, donations is what supports us the most. So that's one great way. And if anyone believes that they have capacity to look into sponsorship or partnership with the for-profit and really sponsoring a Seabin, a unit for a 3 years program, this is really what drives our work further and beyond. And currently there is also an equity crowdfunding campaign about to open in 2 weeks' time, and there's expression of interest that are open for people who would like to have a look. So check out the Seabin Project Instagram page to have more information and the link to be able to look into the offer document and consider the risks of an investment. But Seabin is opening its offer for shares to be bought into Seabin, the company, the for-profit. So donations to the not-for-profit, looking into how to support the for-profit through sponsorship, partnerships, or looking into the shares at the moment for a short period of time. Speaking about the problem and educating ourselves and acting upon the knowledge that we gain through educating ourselves, implementing actions one at a time, not to feel too overwhelmed, but celebrating the wins.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Mahi. That's really great. I think it's a fantastic example of, funding is the lifeblood of any organization, right? Whether it be a for-profit business selling shoes to a not-for-profit business cleaning up the oceans. It employs great people to do great work. The case with the not-for-profits, which we're funding through iEqualChange, when brands give back from every online sale, is providing that lifeblood to incredible organizations like Seabin and almost 50 other projects that we support through vetted NGO leaders such as yourselves that are really changing the world and waking up every day to give it a red hot go, and very passionate and super smart. And so people still have this idea around this sense of overheads. It's a conversation we need to really leave in the dustbin of history. Every organization has running costs and needs to have the lights turned on, and people need to be paid so they can eat. But mostly organizations need to scale it. And the wonderful thing about scaling a not-for-profit is that it scales impact. It scales change, and it can create a whole new normal. And there's never been a more urgent time on the planet for organizations such as yourselves, at a time when we deeply require this flow of capital into the impact sector to mitigate some of the most critical challenges of our time.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's a very valuable conversation to have as well. How I believe that often, even when we can justify expenses through having spent it on things, it's somehow supporting the destruction that we're trying to address in the first place. If we can support people to be the project coordinator, to be the leader, the steward, and this is really where we want to get to, where we, I believe, can address the problem at the source. We do have a technology that is great, and we want to limit the cost to the lowest so we can ripple out as much as possible with great programs. So yeah, this is a great conversation to have too.
Yeah, it's a big one, that one, and important to bring it up. And for any iEqualChange brand or any business out there that is wanting to give back, that is wanting to accelerate their sustainability initiatives, of course, customers, which is all of us, we're wanting to shop our values. We're wanting to buy from brands that have a clear commitment to building a better world. Then please join us. Please join the movement and support organizations like Seabin to create change in this critical time.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
Thank you, Mahi. If there's no questions from the outside world, I think we will leave it there. But thank you so much. In fact, a question has come through. What, if any, are some of the challenges or obstacles the foundation has encountered in promoting the use of Seabins?
Great questions. Again, multiple answers would be possible, but the first one that comes to mind is often people think that the Seabins are floating on their own out at sea, and that potentially forget about the marine environment obstacles. So Seabins have barnacles that attach to them if they're not taken care of regularly, that infiltrates into the pump, and the Seabins needs to be powered. So they often are believed to be much simpler of a technology, even though they are quite simple. They need to be cared for on a about 6 to 8 weeks basis, pressure cleaned and so on. So this is one of the things that have created some obstacles in the past, and we've resolved by having a service model. So making sure that our staff is taking care of them so they work at 99%, 100% efficiency.
And I've seen them working away quietly, sucking in that plastic. So another question, what are your 3 tips for people wanting to make achievable change to plastic pollution? Great question. On a personal level.
Yeah, it's a great question. On a personal level, supporting companies that are doing something about something you care about. So I think for the plastic pollution specifically, looking at products, if you do need to buy a product that is made of plastic, choose the ones that are made of recycled plastics. There is a need for a much bigger buy-in to recycled plastics, be it for synthetic fibers and clothing and polyester. There are great possibilities to use items as a way of creating circular economy. And I think this is really what needs to be encouraged. There is obviously the conversations to be had and the picking up and reducing plastics. There's Plastic Free July coming up very soon, where people are encouraged to put aside any plastic items that they use throughout the month of July, and at the end of the month do an audit and identify which items could potentially be avoided. So that often can come through using a lot of reusable bags, cutlery, bottles, and so on. So reusable items, using plastic items made of recycled plastics, encouraging the circular economy, speaking about it, and educating ourselves. And demanding to the public authorities to address it, to include budget to address it. And that's the citizen responsibility and power that we all hold.
I have noticed, like at Coles and Woolworths, there's less vegetables wrapped in plastic than ever before, and so I think that's a good example of how large companies with a lot of influence can they need to reflect consumers' desires. And I've spent quite a lot of time in Thailand where bananas are wrapped in plastic. It's like, how does that make sense? And and now that was in 7-Eleven, and now that's become illegal. So there is change at the larger corporate level, but it's a great point to end on, that the more we raise our voice to businesses and say, we don't need our cucumbers wrapped in plastic, the more that we can see these changes at the store level, which can have a significant ripple effect in a quick time.
Yeah, supporting the smaller companies that are really making an effort as well. And when we do our shopping, going to places that are caring about the products that they're selling, and making the effort to have this decision making in every decision of where we spend our money. It's our power as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again so much for your time, and thank you for all that you do. And it's wonderful to be in partnership with you and the team, and we look forward to growing our support for you over the coming months and years.
Thank you, and I very much look forward to continuing this relationship. This collaboration is very, very, very appreciated from the whole Seabin team and the ocean. Thank you.
Dr. Mahi Paquette, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.